It is April 16th, the Thursday, and we are back for the Chamber's insight into the economic impact of COVID pandemic. Joining me is Chris Steinecker, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. How are you, sir?
Great, Joe. Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it. I don't know how long we've done this now, but it's good just to get a routine going. And I'm really very pleased with the amount of folks who are willing to share the information. I mean, this whole effort, Joe, I know that everybody says we're all in this together, but everybody's having such an individual, experience.
Yep.
That it's been beautiful to see through your medium, Catalyst, what you're able to show. I mean, from what you're doing with our show, but also what you do throughout your publication right now is really helping all of us remind ourselves that we're all human, that we all have a story, and that we're all being impacted. So I know you're doing a lot of good work at the Catalyst. I just wanted to give you a shout out. And in fact, I was on the site. I saw you have a new tool there, an interactive tool. Can you show me a little bit more?
Sure. Let me pull that up. This started with Margie Manning did a really cool breakdown of the cases by zip code, and so it got a huge response. In fact, that was a big fuel for our first 50,000 plus visitor day, which was a real milestone for us to get 50,000 people to visit the site in
Wow.
just one day. In just one day, it was 53,000 actually.
Congratulations.
So we decided to take it a step further and build an interactive map of the cases by zip code, and so it's color coded. You can see the legend down there at the bottom, and and then you can actually go to each zip code and see what the case looks like.
Cool. Zoom out one more time. I want to see the whole county. Where does it hit the most?
So the most is 33756 has 34 cases in just that zip code, and then we have 28 in 33774. Okay. And as Margie adds these to her roundup each day, she updates the numbers, and then she'll note if there were increases. And I think we had the biggest one was, I think there was an eight case increase in one county between updates, which is a lot.
And again, this just tells me, Joe, is like it's everywhere. Luckily, first of all, Pinellas County isn't an epicenter for this, knock on wood. And it looks like, because of the social distancing our county and our city administrations have done, we may have helped ourselves, but it's still a lot of people, Guy. It's still a lot of people, right?
Yeah, it is. And we are up on episode 24. Actually, I happen to know that. So we're just creeping up. Tomorrow will be episode 25, which is a milestone. And as far as, kudos for the content, I also want to remind everyone that kudos goes out to the community, because we are social news. Our goal is to have 50% of our content come from our journalists, 25% come from people who submit content, and the other 25% come from the comments that go under that content. And I think I'd mentioned previously, but we actually moderate all of our comments, so nothing gets up that hijacks the conversation or is negative or degrades the conversation. It's about putting good ideas out there and working together. And we actually had an article that we put out about the State Theater, and it got great comments to it on both sides, people adjusting to the change of the name for the State Theater to the Florida Social Club. And one of the comments was so well thought out and well articulated that we actually then published it as an article. And so this is exactly what we're hoping to do is to make it a safe place to come for good conversations, so that smart people can come and put their thinking out there without it being disrupted or it's stolen away by somebody who wants to be a jerk.
Yeah.
And so,
it's kind of like it for people who haven't really understand your model now, Joe. I'm glad you explained it, because it really is kind of that place on the internet. If you care about St. Pete and you really want to make a difference, you'll get the information, but you'll also be heard and seen and honored, at least respected, that you have your own personal opinion on this matter. And I think that's what St. Pete, that is what we're calling the St. Pete way. And so I appreciate it. Let's bring in Adriana now too, because that's, part of that, what you've just described too, is why I would love to talk about the St. Pete virtual tip jar today. Adriana, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Fantastic. I was just about to start talking about what you do, but before I do, how about if you just introduce folks to the Catalyst and Chamber listeners and viewers today?
All right. My name is Adriana Generalo. I have been living in St. Pete since 2012, so almost a decade now, which is pretty crazy to think about. And I'm at Big C. I'm the VP of Client Experience there. So happy to be here.
Now, are you working from home, or do you get to go to work, or how has your life been affected by this?
I have been working from home for about, I think this is the 4th week at this point. So pretty early on, we all made the call. I think the last day before, about half, I don't know, maybe more than that of people just opted on their own to stay home. And the next day it was just really clear that it was time to just transition fully to work from home. So it took a little bit of adjusting for sure. It's been maybe the 3rd week was when I started getting a groove and a schedule around it. It's pretty okay now though, pretty smooth.
Gotcha. And just for folks who may not know what Big C does, what is Big C good at?
We are a digital marketing agency, so we are really strong in marketing, of course. We're really good at content creation. We practice inbound marketing, so we're never going out and putting marketing out on someone. We're creating good content that brings them into our client site. So that's where we really excel. And we do some traditional print still. We did a print brochure for the University of Tampa recently, so it's not super common, but we do other things beyond the digital realm, and we do some branding, some just pure digital, e-newsletters or things. It's across the spectrum, but I think our biggest focus is on digital marketing for larger clients.
Great. Well, we're glad you're in our community, and thank you for being here. And I'm glad you're safe and sound. And you know what? Joe and I've been talking about it. It's hard to be at home and be creative, but I think you were one of the most creative human beings I've ever seen with what you put together. Let's talk a little bit about the St. Pete Virtual Tip Jar. And I'm going to have Joe show it in a second, but before just give me a sense of why you started it to begin with. What is it and why did you start it?
So what it is a pretty simple directory that allows people to tip service industry workers that otherwise would be receiving tips, normally every day, whether they're a barista, a server. We've got some salons in there. So it's a pretty broad spectrum of service industry workers. And so it just allows individuals to connect directly to their Venmo or to their PayPal to send them a tip, just to let them know they're not forgotten just because we're not out socially in these establishments. And it came about because I was just curious. My wife and I were on our way to get coffee, and I thought, wow, it's just crazy how much, I can't imagine how much this is impacting people's tips. And I worked in the service industry for a long time prior to now, so I can empathize with that. And we ran into friends and we were keeping our distance, but we were saying, we were just thinking about that. And my friend said, well, people are doing things. And I said, but what are they doing? And he's like, well, and he mentioned something, I forget the name of a liquor company that's starting this fund essentially for service industry workers. And I thought, yeah, but that doesn't feel really local. And he just kept saying like, yeah, but people are doing things. I'm seeing stuff. And it just it stayed with me because I thought like, what are they doing? What's happening? So I did a little research and didn't really see super local efforts happening just for this specific audience. And then I saw a lot of cities across the country doing these things, virtual tip jars. And it ran the spectrum of how intense they got. The most basic ones are just Google Sheets. So you fill out a Google form, it populates a Google Sheet, and that's it. And people can access it that way. And there are varying degrees of complexity for other ones, but it just struck me as something that could be extremely low effort and still have impact. So that's where it all came from.
Well, Joe, if you don't mind sharing your screen and showing it, and Adrian, I'm going to ask you to talk about it. But what struck me as, first of all, if people want to donate, they can do that right now. So it's stpetevirtualtipjar.com. The money is all going towards the people you're about to see. But what strikes me about your design, but also about this whole experience, we can put charts and bar graphs together. We can see flattening of curves and curve data. But what I see on these pages are people's faces, human beings, right? and they've got families, and they've got kids, and they've got animals, and they're all just out there putting themselves out there asking for resources. And I think that's what this strikes me as, is like, this is how human it is. And Joe, I challenge you to try to get to the bottom of this. Like the craziest part of how many folks have put their names up here, it's almost unlimited. I mean, there's a lot of people here. Adriana, do you have any sense of how many folks are actually listed on this site today?
There's slightly over 1,000 people in the directory. So it is a bit of an administrative task to go through and make sure to take care of any duplicates. So give or take, there's about 1,000 at this present time. I think maybe like 30 a day come in.
Did you have any sense that it would be this robust?
No, not at all. And I think what became obvious is before it was a website that had a custom directory, it was just an Airtable, which is a really similar format to Google Sheets, like I was describing, where Airtable allows you to fill out a form and it spits out a pretty nice looking directory. And so I'm so glad that in the beginning, we asked for people to put an image, because when you look at other ones around the country, not everyone's asking that because they're using Google Sheets and there's not a real clear way for you to see a photo that way. But for whatever reason, I asked people to put a photo. I think it might have even been my wife's idea. She always comes up with the best ideas. So we put a photo in there, and then it spit out a nice directory, but you're not able to search on your phone using the Airtable directory. And so it was really obvious right away that that wasn't going to be a sustainable solution, because how are you ever going to find anyone by their first name or where they work? So the COO, Zooey, at Big C really has been doing so much work to make the directory a custom developed directory that you can search. So he's in the process right now of improving that search functionality, and we're going to be adding pagination, because as you see, you're scrolling, it's forever long. And that has a nice kind of effect in the sense that it shows you the breadth of people, but it also, from a user experience point of view, isn't as friendly as it would be if we had some pagination where you can go through however many pages it would take you to get to 1,000 people. It would be a little bit more user friendly. So that'll be coming out soon. But no, I didn't have any sense that it would get this long and this big. And so it's the amount of feedback and the amount of involvement has driven the improvements that we're making, for sure.
Okay, so for those of you who are just joining again, stpetevirtualtipjar.com. These faces are real. These are people in our community. And now I even see it's broadened out through the whole Tampa Bay area. So you're not only just helping, right? So that's a good thing, right? I mean, there's more, because they may work in Tampa, they may live here in St. Pete, but either way, we're helping out our folks throughout the region.
Yeah, it's been interesting. We asked ourselves, Zooey and I have been talking a lot about this. He's really been a huge part of this. And so we'll ask ourselves questions like, you know, are we really concerned about it being strictly St. Pete? You know, and the answer is no. We're not going to police where you live. There are a lot of people from the beaches. It's going into Clearwater. The whole thing we keep saying to ourselves is it's people first. It's not about like, well, we created a logo, which our designer, Kevin Flattery at Big C, created that logo for me. And just because the logo says St. Pete Tip Jar, we want whomever wants to join it, because what you're doing when you click as a user, you click on someone's face, you're brought to a page, which we're calling kind of an individual tip jar. It's just a unique page that they can share on their own social media channels. When you're brought there, you can either go to Venmo or you can go to PayPal. And so you're not being forced to tip anyone. So there's really no reason for us to deny people access to this directory. It's all, if you want to join, if someone wants to tip you, then great, you know, wonderful. If you live in St. Pete, great. If you don't, great.
Man, I think that's what's beautiful. And that's, you know, what we've been calling the way that we feel about St. Pete, the St. Pete way, Adriana, and you've just expressed the St. Pete way in its most organic form. It doesn't matter. It just matters that we're caring and helping and allowing everybody, because we don't know what everybody's story is. We don't know what their life is like, but we know what we can do, and how you just simply thinking through what you experienced as a server, slinging pasta back in the days to what you're doing today, and just spending some time, creative time, when it's the hardest point to do something for people you don't even know is just the St. Pete way. So I just want to thank you for that. I want everybody who's watching right now or listening to go to St. Pete Virtual Tip Jar. If you are a server and you haven't put your face up there, please do so. People are doing it. And if you have, and are so inclined to go find your favorite server and say hello and give them some resources, that would be wonderful too. But Adriana, thank you for what you're doing to keep our community purring along. Keep your family safe, and we'll see you on the other side of this, okay?
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.